What's up, Mi Duole podcast listeners? Episode 24, we are continuing on our theme of Lotija. We brought on two veterans of the race, Dave Sharp, Paul Watson. They trained together, they've raced together, they've been friends for years, and they share some of their secrets about the course, nutrition, the way they train, the way they think, and how Lotija's kind of played a big part in their life for the last 20 years. So pretty fun to hear from these legends, what they do and how they make the race work and really why they do it. A lot of what we do on the Mi Duole team revolves around wrapping up the season at this race. So it's fun to hear from these two guys who've been on the podium so many times and have raced the race so many times. So hopefully you love hearing from them. Obviously, Dave's a repeat customer here. Repeat offender, I think, is what Paul calls him. So it's fun to have somebody back on, and we're grateful for the time they spent. So hopefully you enjoy this episode, and good luck prepping for Lotija. All right, welcome to the Mi Duole podcast. Stuart here, joined with Dave Sharp, Paul Watson. The three of us are on today to talk all things Lotija. You've got two of the masters just at Lotija. We're grateful to have you two on. When I asked them, I just essentially said, we're going to get on and hear all your stories, how you train, what you do, best experiences, worst experiences. These guys have been through it all. So, welcome, dudes. Grateful to have you on.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. This will be fun.
Dave, welcome back. This is your second episode. You're the first second-time guest on the program. Well done.
Repeat offender.
The first one's so bad I need a repeat.
Repeat offender. You wearing your Lone Goat shirt? That's awesome.
That's right.
Nice. Hey, well, I guess by way of introduction, I've known Paul for years. We live in the same neighborhood. And man, Paul, you have been an avid cyclist, athlete, very active your whole life, especially through the school as a school teacher for Wasatch Junior High. I know all the old war stories of students that used to take down to Moab.
Yeah.
Everybody seems to have that experience down there with you. Was that a yearly trip you used to take students down there?
Yeah, yearly. Yep. I could only take 50 at a time, but it was fun to do. That's one of my best memories from teaching school.
So Paul, sidebar, Paul took my daughter Jasmine down to Moab. I never did. He did. She was, 14, and I put her in a pair of my Mi Duole shorts, gloves, and a jersey that was so baggy on her, and hooked her up with a bike, and she made the whole Slick Rock loop.
Nice.
Because of Paul.
Paul, man, he's the master. He'll teach anybody.
That's a tough loop too. I mean, even now to go ride it, it's demanding, wouldn't you say, Dave? I mean, that's a workout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So Paul, you were a teacher at Wasatch Junior High for how many years? 30 years?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
And multiple repeat offender for voted best teacher of the year there in Granite School District. So a lot of awesome accolades as a teacher at Wasatch Junior High. And now you've kind of moved on. You're working harder now. You're doing more work.
Yeah, physically more, it seems, but a lot less stress. So I'm good. Yeah.
Well, we brought you both on to talk about Lotija. Maybe, Paul, you'll start kind of your own history with the race.
Okay.
When you started racing and maybe how many times you've done it and kind of what's happened. Okay, go ahead.
I've done it 15 times. This will be my 16th year. And I think, Dave, you would know, I think like Jim Hutton, Ken Jones, those guys, they're at 20 plus years, I think. So,
Peterson, Moser.
Yeah, those guys have, I think they've got a long list of years too. But anyway, and out of those 15 years, I've probably been on the podium. Well, I know I've been on the podium 6 times at least. There might be a 7th. I can't remember. A couple of second places, 3rd, 4th, a couple times each, probably 5th, 9th, 11th, probably 20 something, I think, in the early days. But yeah, that's my pedigree.
And are those consecutive years, Paul, or have you, every year for the last 15, 16, or did you kind of take years off?
The first year I bought a bike, I rode loaded jaw. And the second year, took a year off, and then have ridden it every year since.
Okay, got it. And then Dave, how about you?
So this will be 19 for me. My first loaded jaw, I think, was in 97.
Okay.
And I've taken 3 years off, one for the birth of a grandchild, one for the birth of a child, and one for COVID.
Ooh.
And I wish I would have raced it last year, but yeah, I took last year off, so I didn't get the Rona, but I got it this year. So this year is 19.
Very cool. And I know in episode 3, Dave was on with us. That's when we first heard from him. A lot of podium experience for Dave. I mean, he doesn't pussyfoot around everybody. He rides to win, baby. So how about podium, Dave, for you?
I've raced at 18. I've been on the podium 15.
Mm-hmm.
And once was a couple of years ago when I rode with Paul. Paul and I just kind of decided to ride it with each other, and Paul was not having the best day, so I sat back. We finished that one together.
Mm-hmm.
Another was in 2004, the year my son died, and I rode it with Chris and Jim and Dan, and gosh, there were like 10 of us that rode it, and you know, the law of averages kind of haunted us, and we had flats and whatever, but 10 of us crossed the line together. So that was awesome. And then another year, you know, I didn't, but I've won it 5 times, and, you know, taken second or third, all the rest.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll start with you, Paul. Why? I want to know why. Why do you do it? What's the driving factor behind doing this every year?
You know, that's a good question, and one that I haven't really a good answer for, other than I wouldn't say that it keeps me riding throughout the season. And maybe it does, but that's not my purpose. I love to ride, so I'll ride whether there's races or not. But God, you know, this will sound like I'm just giving you crap, but I think my wife likes it better than I do. She likes doing the support for it, I think, as much or more than I like riding it. And I don't think she'd let me not do it. So I don't know. I'm not telling you, I'm not just making that up, but I like being there. It's fun to do. It's just great to have it in the fall, just have a nice long event like that. I love it. And I love Jackson. I love the Tetons. So
nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Dave?
So the first year that I did it, my buddy Corey Gillette had done it a couple of years, and my first year there were 300 total riders, racers, and
wow.
And so I had trained with Corey all summer, did the Alpine Loop. I thought I was going to die, and my number one goal was to finish. Mm-hmm. And I got so my first year, you know, I went out as a Cat 5. I was in a breakaway. Our first feed zone was at mile 90. I'd put a new chain on the day before, and I had a sticky link in there. So we stopped to get our feed, and I was like bending my chain to make it more pliable, and it snapped. So one of the other guys in the break with me had a chain tool he let me borrow, and then my support dude helped me with it. And I got back on, and I was in no man's land for 100 miles, just dying and dehydrated. And I thought, I just got to finish. And I did finish, and then I discovered that I took third. And I'm like, I can do this. I can win this thing. And then I started doing it, and I started winning it. And I'm like, I wasn't ever an endurance guy before, and I just got the bug. But I would say for me, the why is, bar none, the camaraderie of the training all summer long with guys like you guys and everybody on the team, those big long Saturday rides where you dig deep, and then you just relish that every week, and it's addictive. I mean, and I can't get enough of it. And that's what keeps me going all winter long is thinking about the training and then just the anticipation of the race. And yeah, there are a lot of other big races, but for whatever reason, Lotus Jaw is kind of the holy grail because it's so freaking long and it's hard and it sucks at times, but that's what motivates me.
Nice. So good.
And it's awesome.
Yep. I have you guys ever hiked Havasupai down to the waterfalls?
Wish I had.
No, but that's on the bucket list.
So it's kind of one of those things where when you get down there, you're like, this is incredible. And then when you hike out, you know, for the first couple hours, you're like, this is absolutely the worst thing I've ever done in my life. I will never come back here. It does not matter. And then a week later, you're like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. We got to go back. And I feel like Lotus is exactly the same. It's like the same thing.
Yeah.
Dave, you said it was the Lotus glow. You know, when you're done, you're just like relishing in all the experiences that you've had and how fun it was. And I love that that week after.
Well, and I'll say that probably the highlight for me of the whole race is the hour after, where we're sitting in the river, which is kind of a new thing now, and I can scab off Sean's Lay's potato chips in the river, and just hanging out, talking about stories with everybody and watching them finish.
Yeah,
that is the highlight for me of the entire race.
That's a Giardia factory, man, with all those butts in the river. Woo!
So, Paul, if you're thinking back, anything that really stands out for you, best or worst experiences, you got a little list.
I've just had 2 years that have been really bad where I have a hiatal hernia, which creates GERD or reflux disease for me. So I have to be careful how I eat. And for a few years when I was trying to get more and more fit, it was, that race would just bring out the worst in me. It's a showstopper when it happens. I just went to the finish line. But so those 2 or 3 years when that was raging, those were bad. But then, the rest of them have been good, regardless of the results. They've been fun. And I, whether podium or not, I've loved doing them. It's a great event. So, yeah, just a couple of bad ones.
Any best experiences, Paul? Anything that you remember? Days where everything kind of came together.
Well, I remember one of the ones where I took second. I was in a sprint with Scott Kaiser for the finish line. Dave knows him. And anyway, I was cramping so bad, and as I gained on him, I went out around him and got about halfway up, to where I just a wheels, diameter, so to speak, off of the finish line, and he won that. But it was just fun to be in the sprint with him, to give it a go. But anyway, that was a fun year. And Chris Peterson was right close there. He was not far behind. I think he was right in the mix there. And Ken Jones from our team took third that year.
Wow.
So that was fun having that many Mi Duoles kind of finished together. Anyway.
I know, Dave, you always say that. How is it possible that 200 miles could be decided by half a wheel length at the end? Just crazy to think about.
Every year.
Dave, how about you? Best, worst experiences? Anything really stand out for you looking back?
I mean, my best experience is every year. My worst experience is every year at about mile 190. My feet hurt so bad. I'm developing neuropathy in my feet, and I get the intense hot foot after about 6 hours, and nothing will solve it. So that's terrible. And then the bladder control is the worst. I had a year with 10 bottles in and 0 out, and I was in a break and we didn't stop, and I was in so much pain. And so those stand out as just painful experiences, but every one has been my best experience also. The ones that stand out probably for me are the first one, because I finished. After that was the 2004 when I, was surrounded by all these amazing guys who kind of carried me through the season after my son died, and then we rode it together and finished together. And then 2005 was Snow to Jaw, and for me that was awesome because it was kind of a race of attrition, and I was probably 12 or maybe 15 pounds heavier at that time, and so the cold didn't really affect me, and I just kept going and just kept hammering, and I made it through Montpelier, and I was solo, and then I caught Jerem Zinger going up Salt River, and we rode together until halfway through Snake River Canyon, and then he pulled out for a bit, and I just kept going, and I think I ended up like 4th or 6th overall and won it, and it was the most miserable day on the bike ever, but it was awesome, so those are probably my highlights.
Hey, Dave, tell Stu about the race where you got quoted in the Jackson Hole newspaper when you crossed the line after drinking all those 10 bottles of drink and not stopping to pee.
That was the one. I mean, I crossed, so I was in a break with 2 other guys, and they were teammates, and they both peed off the bike on the descents. I can't do that. I have the worst stage fright in the world. So I can't even pee when we pull over. So yeah, I mean, I crossed the line, and I mean, I couldn't even see. I was in so much pain. I literally threw my bike at Jeannie, and I said, 10 bottles in, I gotta pee like a racehorse, and I just bolted for the outhouse. And they quoted me in the Jackson paper on that.
Oh my gosh, so good.
That was not intentional.
Well, you both have extremely dedicated work ethic. Like Paul said, I don't even know. I mean, if they decided to do the race tomorrow, you'd both be ready. Maybe walk through a few. How does your minds think when it comes to training? Is there a plan? Is there structure? Is there must-dos for you guys when it comes to training for this day? Is there stuff that you've learned that you've got to do? It has to happen in order to be ready. How about you go first, Paul?
Dave, let me lead out with this just for a second, because when I bought a bike at age 47, I started riding it, and I'd done low to jaw a couple of times, and Dave's son Evan was in my class, and for some reason during a lull there, I don't remember why, but someone asked me a question about biking. I guess that, maybe I had suntanned arms, or I don't know what brought it up. And I said, yeah, I'm getting ready for low to jaw. And Evan goes, oh, my dad won that. And I looked at him, I said, are you kidding? And he said, no, he rides all the time. And I'm like, and I was thinking, maybe he didn't know what I was talking about, loading, whatever. Anyway, I went home, I got online and went to Low to Jaw website, and sure enough, David won his category. And so I said to Evan, hey, I need to get your dad's cell number. Do you think he'd let you give it to me? Oh yeah, sure. And he just wraps it off. And eventually I called Dave, went over to meet him, and just asked him questions about how he trains and so forth. And that started a great friendship and a lot of years of riding together. And Dave's pretty much been, I don't know that, well, Dave, you've sort of set the pace through all those years of training. And even though, there's days when we don't ride together, we're both out there doing it. And but it's largely been Dave's recipe for success. So, and I love the workout. I love being out there. I love sweating. I gave up golf in a heartbeat for cycling because I just love to sweat, and this is, anyway, and Dave loves it too. And so he was the right guy for me to get hooked up with eventually. But anyway, go ahead, Dave.
That was a funny phone call. Because I didn't know Paul at all.
We sat down in the living room. It's like this formal meeting, sitting in his living room, And I felt like a news reporter asking him questions, and writing down answers and so forth. But anyway.
Well, and the best part is both Evan and Jazz and Riley all had Paul as a teacher, and Riley played the drums, and Paul had let him sleep under the timpani every day during class, and Riley still got an A every term out of Paul's class.
I do. I didn't want to tick his dad off.
Nice.
But anyway, go ahead, Dave. With how, how do we train? How do you train?
I mean, I just somehow figured out a recipe that worked for me, and that recipe, and I may have mentioned this in the first podcast I did, but it's the 7 P's, and proper prior planning prevents piss poor for performance. And I try to live my life by the 7 P's in everything I do, and they especially apply to low to jaw training. And that for me starts with doing 100-milers pretty much every weekend, starting in May or June. Train when it's hot, train when it's cold, train if you have to when it's raining. Train like you're going to race, so that when race day comes, it's just another training day. So that, you've got to learn how to eat on the bike. Because, most of the rides we do are 5 or 6 hours. By the time you get into hours 7, 8, 9, your stomach shuts down. Everything starts to hurt. You feel terrible. You've got to train that way so that when that hits you during race day, you're prepared and it doesn't derail your day. And I raced the crits for years, and those were super helpful. I would say, probably, like Stu, as you mentioned at the top of the hour, amazing how you could do this 205-mile race, and then the last mile is a sprint. So, and that's almost how every race has come down for me. And for me, racing the crits taught me how to sprint. So, I would encourage everybody, go out in a group of 2, 3, 4 guys, go out on Wasatch, set some markers, foam poles or whatever, and just start sprinting each other. Learn how to draft each other. You got to figure out through the course of the race, if this is going to come down to a sprint, whose wheel is going to be the strongest? How am I going to play this out? When do I want to go? And invariably, the best laid plans always fail. And so that's why you've got that last couple of kilometers as you're coming in from Wilson, and everybody's playing cat and mouse, and you're just so high strung. For me, that is the highlight moment of the entire race, because it comes down to that sprint. And if you can master that sprint and win it, there's no greater feeling. So practice all that stuff. And of course, you got to put in the time, so that you're physically fit, but you got to have the mental fitness, so that you can make it through, you can work through the pain, and also just have fun. Because for me, a lot of times I'm like, this isn't even fun. I just want it to be over because I'm hurting so bad. But anyway, that's how I train. And so I start doing those rides in, May, June with all you guys, and they're so fun. And so then the day the race comes, I'm super anxious. I don't sleep well. I can barely eat anything. But then once we get rolling and you just kind of settle in, it's awesome.
Yep.
You guys have been there. It's awesome.
Nice. Well, let's go to race day, maybe day before. Let's say, I don't want to give away too many of your secrets in case we got competitors listening. You never know when that massive guy is going to be listening.
Right. Right.
What do you guys?
We have no secrets.
What do you guys do? Like, let's talk nutrition. What have you learned over the years that it works for you? You love it. Day before and race day. What's in your bottles? What's in your back pockets? What do you do at feed zones? Let's just hear it all.
Dave, I think we're a little.
Paul and I are very different. So, Paul, you go first.
Yeah, I think we're so in my bottles I carry one mixed with drinks, one with water, and I think it's important to realize that whether you take a gel with water or a mixed drink or shot blocks in water, They're essentially the same. It's sugar water in your stomach that gets absorbed into your body, and then but it has to be at the right concentration level. So too often you can get it too high of a sugar content. It needs to be at about that 6% carb concentration to be drawn across the intestinal wall into the blood, which then gets to your muscles. If it's higher than that, it has to reach that isotonic level. So it'll draw water from your body back into the intestine to dilute the drink that you just had if it's too sugary, before it can be drawn across. And you don't want your body giving up water to go back into your gut to fix the problems. So anyway, that's just something to remember with gels and drinks and shot blocks and so forth. But another thing that I find important, I think this is where Dave and I differ. Cameron Hoffman, famous local rider, really strong, probably the most celebrated Utah rider, except for the ones that have ridden pro, like Zabriskie and so forth. But anyway, he sort of alluded to this when he said, in the same article, he said that Loaded Jaw is not a climber's race, it's a sprinter's race. And Dave's already talked about that. And that's really true. I mean, you think that how can it, anyway, you have to be a good climber, but it's a sprinter race. But anyway, he also said that it's important to take in solid food for most riders. Now, there might be some that can just make it work on drinks and gels, but and he's so serious about that he said, before I get to Preston, I've already eaten a bar and I've already drunk a bottle of liquid. And what he's drinking was like a 12-ounce bottle in his pocket because he needed his 2 bottles to get to Montpelier, his regular bottles, but he would consume like a bottle of some drink and a bar before he gets to Preston. And the last thing you want to do in the cold morning air, just having had breakfast, is eat a bar and drink. And for that part, all of Loaded Jaw is all about eating and drinking whether you feel like it or not. Like you don't have a choice. If you're racing, you want to place, and you want to finish strong, you've got to stay up on your food. And the longer races get, the more important it is to have solid foods, I've found. So I use rice cakes that Phil Lim, Dr. Lim talks about in his book. And I get at the feed zone, I get a little baggie. And by the way, when you get to the feed zone, have a pre-planned set of items that your support crew hands up to you that you figured out, the days before, and one maybe has a label of Montpelier, you get this bag. At Afton, you get this bag, and at Alpine, you get this bag of food, and you just get it and put it in your pockets. I always get watermelon pieces. This is my treat. Right at the feed zone, I open up this little half-size Ziploc bag. It has like 6 or 8 pieces of watermelon in it. Nothing tastes better that day than those pieces of watermelon. It just brightens your outlook, at least for a while. But anyway, in my hand-up bag, there's these rice cakes that I've made. There's a banana, half a banana usually. There's gels, and there's the drink mixes in my bottle. One's water to go with my gels, the others, and then I try for 200 calories per hour. It's hard to do, but the professionals and the science talk about this a lot, and pros can even get up to 300 plus calories per hour. Really hard to do, something you have to practice. And I wouldn't do anything on Loaded Jaw that you haven't already tried over and over in practice, so try for 200 calories on a long Saturday and see if you can come close to that. And if you can, it's amazing how when you eat and drink, you just do better. Yeah. But anyway, that's my food thing. I also take some thermo tabs with me that are mostly sodium, like 4 different types of sodium. And I'll take a couple of those. And then as I get to like Afton, I start taking, visit each feed zone. I'll take 2 of those. And I'll take 2 ibuprofens from Afton, at Afton and at Alpine, just to take the gnawing pain, of your butt and your hands and your triceps and your neck muscles from holding your head and all that stuff. It just masks the pain to get you to the finish line. Right. Anyway, that's my food thing.
That was good. Very good. Dave, you said yours is different. Let's hear it.
Yeah, Paul's way more scientific than I am. He reads all the research, and I don't. I'm lazy. But I would say, back to the point I made, race like you train. Eat stuff that you're used to eating and that you like and that you know that you can tolerate. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, that kind of stuff is Pop-Tarts. Mm-hmm. In my bottles, I'll have, same with Paul, I start with, I have a full 28-ounce mixed bottle and a bottle of water for each feed zone. And I try to drink a full bottle every hour. That's hard to do at the beginning. It's hard to do at the end. My mix consists of 1 scoop of Carbo Rocket and 1 scoop of Country Time lemonade. Because it tastes good. It's easy on my stomach. It's good calories. And I'm used to it. Mm. I eat probably a banana at every feed zone. I'll take gels and blocks, SIS gels as well. And that basically carries me towards the end of the race. I'll have a small bag of salty mixed nuts. Get a little protein, and the salt is good because I get to the point where I can't tolerate the sweet stuff anymore. My stomach it's like I can barely take it. But for me, I found a couple little secrets. I'll pop 800 ibuprofen before the start, and then I'll pop another 800 about 7 hours later, because that's when I really start to get sore. I know you're not supposed to take them for 8 hours, but anyway, but then also, so I only stop at 3 feed zones, right? Montpelier, Afton, and Snake River Canyon. At each feed zone, I'll pop 4 Tums, like the big Tums tablets, and they're fruit flavor, and then you just chomp them down. And what I found is those totally settle my stomach. So I don't get that kind of stomach churn that oftentimes you get from too much sweets, or your stomach shuts down. But for me, that really helps. The other thing is, like, just a half a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is good to just mix it up. But what I find, and I've got a spreadsheet where I track all this stuff, and I do it year to year, and I refine it year to year, and I always find that towards the end of the day, I'm putting more food back in my bag than I'm taking out. Yeah. So one of my tricks is, because I'm racing it to win, and so I'm playing heads up through every feed zone. I drill it to the front of the feed zone, so I'm the first one through, especially at Montpelier. I have my wife wait at the far end of the feed zone. I carry an extra musette bag in my pocket at the start, so that as I'm coming into the feed zone, I put my empty bottles and my garbage and food I don't want in my musette bag. I roll up to her, I drop the bag at her feet while she's holding the bag out for me, and I grab it and I just go. I sling it around my shoulder, put my bottles in, fill my pockets, fold up the bag, put it back in, and I'm just hammering, because that's how the guys that I've raced with for years do it. And I've been caught with my pants down a few times in the feed zone where I've had to like TT it back up to the group, and it's brutal. So yeah. I know a lot of guys aren't that serious and they want to stop, and you see some guys having a picnic and a massage. I mean, and that's fine if that's your approach. That's not mine. I mean, so anyway, those are kind of that's what works for me. But I'd say train with all that stuff and figure out what works for you, and then use that on race day. Don't do anything on race day that you haven't trained with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like your body, when you put that stuff in from the summer, it's like, oh, we know what to do. We know what's coming now. Here comes the Country Time lemonade Carbo Rocket mix. Like, we know it.
That's right.
But then all of a sudden you decide to add half a teaspoon of salt liquid and another full scoop of carbo, whatever. And now your body's like, no, this isn't how we do this. This is we're gonna shut down. So
well, and some years I've tried to take a Red Bull at Alpine,
mm-hmm.
and I can't get it down. And plus I take caffeinated gels and blocks, and so that much caffeine by the end of the day, 9 o'clock at night, I'm trying to fall asleep and I'm like quivering like a fish. So I try to limit that.
Yeah, the half-life of caffeine is 5 hours. So at sleep time, you're still running on half your.
Oh yeah.
That's what was so funny about last year. My start time last year, because of COVID, was at 5. So I started the race at 5 a.m. We were done at like 2. I mean, it was so funny to sit at that finish line for so long waiting for everybody.
Hey, Stu, I was going to tell any of the listeners, if what I've found, if you have a more tender gut like me, that Scratch Labs mix is man, that was a game changer for me. That really helped. And when I take sodium tabs and ibuprofen, I take them in smaller doses, because if you were to take a salt tablet, just the pure salt thing, for me, it would just cause instant gut problems. And same with, if I went to the 800 milligrams of Ibu that Dave does, man, my stomach would just. So if you have an uneasy stomach, take like 400 milligrams 2 or 3 times during the race, and sodium, supplements at a lighter, easier dosage, and always take them with food. And I think you'll find that if you have a light stomach, so to speak, that'll work better. But
nice.
So Paul, what you're saying is that's why I pee blood after every race?
Yeah, like a racehorse. Yeah.
Nice. Quote him. It's in the newspaper.
Yeah, he's like 9 bottles in and no bottles out. I got to pee like a racehorse. She's like, oh, I got to write that down.
Nice. So I know that everybody always overthinks strategy of this course. There's so much going on. So any insider information that you guys do, just because of what you've learned over the years of how the course rides?
Okay, you go first, Dave. You got more experience.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The courses have changed quite a bit since I first started racing it. It's definitely the hardest course now that I think that it's ever been, because you've got, 200 and something miles over, and you get almost 10,000 vertical. So, as you roll out, everybody's kind of nervous, and usually it's freezing cold. You just got to kind of deal with that. I would say where the race for me starts, and our group usually takes a neutral P break right before the real climbing section starts, heading into Strawberry. Do not get left behind in the P break if you take one. Do not get in the back of the pack. I always try to ride at the very front of the pack so I can cover any attack that goes off. And that's going to happen, at least in my group, every year I've done it, at that base of Strawberry. And the base of Strawberry starts really long before the real steep section does, because, it's got a good, 3% grade that gets hard because, the horses are out of the barn and they're going. And so then by the time you hit the base of the climb, you're, at least in my packs, they've been pretty thinned out to maybe 10 or 12 guys. Then you've got that Strawberry climb. You hit it to the top of that, and you meet, in my group again, we're down to now 3 or 4 guys, but there's that false flat, and then you've got another climb a couple miles after. So that's always a key spot, as well as the descents. Geneva is a steep climb, but it's a short climb. Salt River is a steep climb, but a short climb. Don't get caught behind on the descents, because like coming off Salt River, invariably, you'll hit 50, 55 on that descent. But then as soon as you start to flatten out, a lot of times you'll hit a headwind. And if you're not with the group and you're alone, you're screwed, because you'll never catch those guys in front of you. And from then on, it's just stay with the group, try to get everybody to work. I had an experience 2 years ago with the one dude didn't work, at Hoback, and he just sat in the whole time and just coasted with us. And then he jumped us with 2K to go and kind of took us by surprise, and he ended up winning. So, those are kind of, for me, the places for the climbs where I always try to be at the very front to cover any attack. And then at the sprint, it's just you just gotta be ready for it.
Yeah.
Never lead the sprint out. Never lead the sprint out, because you'll get beat every time. So find the right wheel to follow, stay on that wheel until 200 meters, and then just give it everything you have.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think the ugly parts of the ride for me, I don't know how you feel, Dave, but before Salt River Climb starts, there's several miles of 1, 2, 3, and 4% leading up to that. And I hate that, because you just feel like it zaps your energy, and then all of a sudden you've got the steeper climb of the day staring you in the face. But anyway,
well, and the line for the KOM starts way before the climb even starts on Salt River.
Yeah. And I think so at that point I'd try to do as much drafting as you can. I realize that 2 climbs have thinned the herd, so sometimes you're down to 5 or 6 riders, maybe a dozen riders if you're lucky, and if you can spend just be smart about how much time and effort you spend pulling the train, because you want to start the serious climbing with something in your legs. And then the descent there, as you know, any of you that have ridden it, you descend, like Dave said, about 55 miles an hour, but then it's a 3%, 2%, 1% downhill grade for quite a long while. And if you can be with the front runners at that point, you can spin at 30 miles an hour and still be getting a rest, trading leads. Whereas if you're alone, like I was off the back, just maybe 100 yards, and we topped out last year, and I had to drill for all I was worth, and I got to about 20 yards of the 3 guys that descended together, and I just thought I can't, I got to quit. And I just like kind of went blank and just stayed on my pace, and thank goodness hooked on and stayed there the rest of the day. But that is not the way to do it, man. You've got to top out with those guys and be ready to pedal on that after you've come out of your tuck. Be ready to pedal on that descent off of Salt River.
Hey, Stu, one other thing I thought of that I'll mention is, for me, I converted to tubeless tires last year. And I know there may be some guys out there that still haven't, but there are years when I would put in wheels in the wheel car and years that I didn't. And I've had 3 loaded jaws where I've flatted, or maybe 4. And every time I've done that, I've had to just chase back on. And one time I was in the break and I flatted, and then like 10 miles later I flatted again. And both times it took me an hour to chase back on to the lead group, which I was able to do. But then I caught these guys halfway up Snake River Canyon, and then they started attacking me because they knew that I had won it the year before. And anyway, it was brutal. So, but I would say tubeless tires are a game changer, because you don't have to worry about flats. And unless you run over a piece of glass or something, have plenty of stands in your tubes or in your tires, and you really don't have to worry about flats. And that, for me, has been an issue at years. So I would highly recommend using tubeless.
Hey, Stu, your flat experience was, you were close to the end and you were at the front runners.
That's right.
And that ruined your day.
You
were like, what, 6 miles from the finish line or something?
Yeah, we had just come off the path, wrapping around there in that back area. That little weird pathway, and you're winding along, and then all of a sudden I could feel my front tire going squishy, and there's not a whole lot you can do.
The tears set in.
Although it's easy. I can just tell everybody, if I wouldn't have got a flat, I would have won. So that's better than even winning. Just tell them.
Are you riding tubeless now?
No. So I rode tubeless last year, and Kristen rides tubeless, but no, I ride tubes in my. I just hate having to worry about them, to be honest. Like all the. I mean, maybe it's great for race day, but I just use tubes.
If you get a slice in your tubeless tires, we've both had that happen to where your bacon strips can't plug them, and with the tube you could hurry and put another tube in, and that, I mean, they have their advantage for sure. But I'd put stands in those tubes. Do you do that?
Yeah, you taught me that.
Yeah.
1 ounce.
I will also say if you're in the break, then generally there's a wheel car behind you, and that's been my case. And so I've been able to get a wheel pretty quick. But when the group is going at 22 miles an hour, that's hard to catch back on.
Hey, by the way, the latest thing out is inserts for road bikes. I mean, they've been around for mountain bikes for quite a while, and apparently these inserts are made of a foam rubber. It's just like like one of those worms you jump in the swimming pool with that keep you afloat. They're only this diameter of your tire, so 25s or 28s they come in. Anyway, you put these in your tire, and apparently if you get a flat and your stands can't fix it, you can ride. Someone said it's sort of like riding with about 40 pounds of air pressure in your tire, but you can ride clear to the finish line with those inserts, and they weigh like remarkably little. I can't remember the stats, but Vittoria makes the best ones, and I think they're just, they're like an ounce of weight, and that's how much stands we put in our tires. I think they're really lightweight, so that maybe someday I'll be using those. I don't know. Nice. Something to think about. But hey, relative to equipment, I would also add that you see this a lot of times. People will talk about mechanicals they've had. That what I find is that a lot of times they probably could have been solved before that day got there. And I'd just be sure to make sure that all the creaks, all the clicks, all that are out of your system, get what help you need at the shop. But and then I don't know. I'm a little superstitious, but I do all this work the day before, and then I ride it Friday to make sure that everything works. I would not show up to Lotajaw having even lubed your chain and not try. Like I'd make sure that everything you've done is it's working. And then I wouldn't take lights unless you start early like you did last year. You might have to. If you're riding for an hour and a half and before it even starts to get light, you may have to. But at the hour I start, you can sort of limp through the back streets of Logan with street lights that are shining on the road, and by the time we get on the road to Preston, it's just enough light to see. And I put all my tire repair stuff in my jersey pocket. I don't take a saddle bag anymore, but for other people, the saddle bag's their way to carry it, and they like that. But anyway, that's my thing on equipment. What we ought to talk about is cold weather clothing, because last year it got to 32 degrees just outside Preston. That was brutal. And there have been years that are worse.
I've had 20.
Yeah, I only try to go out with arm warmers and a vest, and maybe long finger gloves and toe warmers that you can then just swap out at the first feed zone and not carry the rest of the day. Yeah. Anything more than that is too much. Yeah. And you're just going to suffer.
I think you have to be able to get rid of it, take it off while you're riding and be able to dump it, because anything that, if you wear like a long undershirt or even a buff, try to take a buff off, take your helmet off, and then Marshall will DQ you to get that buff off, but one thing I found, this sounds crazy, but if it's really cold weather, I wear 2 vests, and it's surprising how warm that is.
Yeah.
When you need it. And then I take the first one off and put it in my pocket, and then when I get to Montpelier, they both get put in my bag and dropped at Cindy's feet, along with my gloves and toe warmers and sleeves. And that's something to think about. A lot of people haven't really solved that problem yet if they're new to racing. But if you're not racing, then just pull up to the feed zone and take 10 minutes and get all your clothes off and get back on and ride.
Okay. You know what I did last year for my hands is I took toe warmers, and you know how they have the sticky.
Yeah.
So I just stuck the toe warmers on my bars, and then I just ripped them off like Montpelier once it was finally warm. So I didn't have to worry about like the loose hand warmers, rattling around in my gloves or whatever. I just stuck the hand warmers on my hoods. And it was kind of ghetto, but then I didn't even care. It was so cold. I was glad I had them. So
great idea.
That's genius.
Yeah, that's something I got to try. That's a good one. How about support crew? Do you care if we talk for a minute about that?
No, let's do it. Yeah, let's do a support crew.
Again, this all changes if you're racing or not racing, right? But let's assume that you're racing. It's interesting to see families come up with all the kids and pulling a wagon, and they've got like a whole spread of food there, as though the rider's going to come in and decide what he wants, and then they he'll pick and choose among all the stuff. That works if you're not racing, but if you're racing, I think we're back to you don't get that luxury. Whatever you put in your bag, even if you don't feel like eating it, you gotta eat it and go with it. But I like to use the neutral feed zones for water and occasional gel if it's there. Sometimes I just take the water and wet my back with it on a hot day and drop the bottle before I even get out of the feed zone almost. But if you need the water because you missed a hand up or whatever, then you could always hang on to it. But that's the one thing that often that newbies don't think about is your support crew needs food to eat themselves. That happens so many times, and I've heard so many stories about by the time they get to Afton, they're starving, and so they find the local Subway, and there's one there, and the line is 2 blocks long, and we'll just get in it, and that's your shortest leg from Afton to Alpine, and right. You're there and gone, and there was no one there to meet you, and so just make sure they plan food for themselves, because often they'll just jump in there and start driving and not realize that they don't have any food to eat, and to try to go buy food, if you're a racer, that's just not a good plan for the day, Anyway, Dave, you might have other things.
Nope. 7 Ps, baby.
Yep. Yeah.
That race crew stuff is nerve-wracking. I did it once for Kristen, where it was all I did was support her. It was tough. That's a tough day. It's a tough day as support crew. Not easy.
Hey, another loaded jaw tip I'd bring up is it's tempting to want to when you're racing. Again, that doesn't matter if you're not racing, but if you're racing, I'd be careful not to share support with another rider. There's just too many variables, and you're already at risk just with your own set of variables on that day, and I'd be careful even about planning. Dave and I agreed to ride together one time. That's because Dave had just had some heart problems that had been diagnosed, and he was struggling with it. And Dave, you've maybe told this, but he'd even reached a point where he had decided that maybe he wouldn't be racing anymore. And so, but he'd already signed up for loaded job, paid the money, so we rode together. And even in his compromised situation, that was one of my bad days. I was holding him back like at every feed zone. But anyway, we rode together and finished together. But if you plan to ride with buddies, and you plan to race, I would. It's not going to work. Someone will always be disadvantaged, and someone will always be advantaged by that agreement. And either you change midstream and decide to quit riding together and just go and ride your own race, but it usually is too late. And if you think that maybe if you get 4 or 5 that are pretty, equal riders together, and that you're going to just go and beat the crap out of everyone, there's 3 or 4 guys in your start pack that'll have something to say about that, and you'll find out who they are, and they'll win the race. I mean, you got to assume there's people that are just as strong, if not stronger. And so I just be careful, because usually when I've watched groups do that over my years of doing this, it always breaks down, and the person who is disadvantaged the most probably could have been among the sprint for the finish had he had a different plan. And so that's if you're racing. If your goal is to go there and ride with buddies, then do it and have fun, because those are also really great days. I did that 2 or 3 of my years, just rode with good friends, and those were fun times. So, but if your goal is to podium, I would say be careful about committing to anyone, because there's, someone's going to get sick, someone's going to have diarrhea, someone's going to throw up, someone's going to have a flat, someone's going to miss their support. There's so many things that'll mess up that plan. But
that's great advice, Paul. So good. That's great advice, because it's always coming down to that. Hey, we're racing together. We might as well share support, share the hotel room. Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, I mean, you can try it, but I've never seen it work well. But and with sharing support, I'm not sure there's really a good reason for it. I mean, there might, if someone has a car breakdown or whatever, and that's happened to a friend of mine, then sharing support's a great idea, because that'll be his only way to get food. But anyway.
Well, nice. Hey, anything else? We're kind of coming in for a landing here. Any other final thoughts here, Dave or Paul, as we wrap up?
I would only say enjoy the journey of training, enjoy the race day. I hope everybody finishes, and I hope everybody wins.
Yeah.
You're all winners.
Yeah.
Everybody's winning.
Hey,
even if you're on the podium.
Yeah. I would say this, that the best biker in the world is the one out there having the most fun. And on any given ride, any one of us could feel or convince ourselves that we're the best biker in the world, because we're having the most fun. And I think that's important to remember. And then for me, I always want to keep it in perspective. The great adventure in life for me is family, wife, kids, and this is secondary, if not tertiary, or 5th place. I don't know, but the big adventure, don't confuse, don't get messed up, don't let this take you away from bigger priorities. And over a course of a lifetime, you'll love your life, because you've kept it all in order. Anyway.
Great advice, Paul. Well, as Dave said, enjoy the best, worst day of the year. This is going to be
That's right.
You learn some stuff to make your worst day a little better. Just kidding. It's a great day. All right,
Stu, you've done a great job as the leader of the Mi Duole team, and you don't get thanks often enough. But man, thank you for all the effort and time and hours and genius you put into this.
Well, it's a lot of
fun.
And
these podcasts are awesome.
Well, let's hope people are listening. Let's hope it's not just one guy downloading it like 200 times a week.
Oh, man.
Guys, I look up to you both. You're both great friends, mentors, dads that I want to be like, fathers, the way you treat your children and wives. I'm grateful for both of you. So thanks for being on.
Thanks to you.
Well, thanks, Stu. That's funny, because I say the same about you.
Yeah.
I want to be you someday, right?
I want that beard, man. I want to be able to do that.
This is glued on.
Oh man.
All right.
Love you, bro.
Love you guys.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, see ya.
See ya.